Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Today I thought I'd do something kind of not too terribly complex, but it should have some a cool look to it. I've had this kind of, I don't know if I want to call it a marquise shape or more of a like a football shape almost, interestingly cut piece of chrysoprase, and I thought I'd set it in a ring and make something interesting. Um, Oftentimes when I do the head of a ring, I do it flat and then mount it on a band. This one I'm going to do in a curved state. We're going to mount the bezel onto a curved piece, and then we'll add the decorations to it, and we'll see how it comes out. I think it should be fun. So let's get started on this project. So this is one of my design idea sketchbooks that you can get on my merch store. I have multiple different kinds. This particular one has some information about the different flow temperatures of types of solder. A lot of them have conversion charts or other relevant information about metalsmithing on the back. The key feature for me, though, is the dot matrix in the background here because it allows me to draw a little bit better pictures since that's not my primary skill. And it's really nice to have a permanent record of what you've made. That way you can go back and do it without having to re-remember or reinvent the wheel each time. So I have several of these books full of designs now, and I find them pretty useful. So get yourself one or two of those. They're a great way to keep track of your stuff. So this is what I'm going to do today. I have this piece of chrysoprase here. I can even measure it. I should probably measure that. 16 millimeters by 16 by 10. It's an unusual cut. It's got kind of a rounded surface on both sides. But I'm going to set it just like a regular cabochon. Chrysoprase, if you've never heard of chrysoprase before, is a type of agate. It's oftentimes considered the most valuable type of agate, or it used to be. A lot of it comes from Australia, so I like it. It's got a really kind of vivid green color to it, and it's always been one of my faves. So we're going to start by making a bezel for it, but instead of what we normally do, which would be to solder it to a flat piece of sheet, this one I want to have the sheet kind of match the curve of the band that I'm going to make. And in order to do that, we're going to have to shape the bottom of the bezel in order to get it to solder down there nicely. And then I'm going to add a series of different sets of decorations around there. So we're going to have to cut a piece of sheet, curve it a little bit to match the curve of the band, solder the bezel down after we shape the bottom of the bezel, and then add those decorations. And I've got some various bits of twisted wire that I've made in the past. I did this one I did yesterday just because I wanted to have some that went in the opposite direction of the other ones, because apparently I usually twist them in the same direction. So I'll probably use this one and one of these skinnier ones. I think this is 20 gauge wire that I twisted together. This one's probably 22. This one's probably 22 as well. Well, no, 20 maybe? I don't know. 22 and then maybe something thinner. I'm not sure on that one, but it was some pieces laying around and I'm going to use them. So I'm also going to put a row of balls in there, so we're going to have nested different designs here. I made some silver balls yesterday out of some scrap, and I'll show you how I did that when we get to that stage. And you could also use, they make that wire that looks like little silver balls. You could put that around here instead if you wanted to. That's probably a lot easier. But I don't have any of that, so we're just going to use regular balls the traditional way. The band, I had some, this was actually made from some scrap I had. I rolled it out and pulled it through the draw plate a couple of times, and then I rolled it through the rolling mill to flatten it out again. It was about 12 gauge square roughly, and now it's been flattened down to a little bit bigger than a millimeter probably. And I'm going to do a split band like this with two pieces of this. And I think I'm going to go all the way around with it, so we'll connect them at the top. But that's my plan. So let's make a bezel for this to start with. I'm going to use 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip in 26 gauge, which equates to 4.76 millimeters tall by 0.41 millimeters, if I recall correctly. If you haven't been to my channel before, here's my torch and solder kind of setup that I use. just going to file the end of this flat to start with. To make the bezel for this, I'm not going to start it at the corner or on the end, the point. That usually is not a good idea because it'll be hard to get both sides the same, and it'll be hard to bend that spot too a little bit if it's on a peak there. So we'll kind of start off by making it like this. We'll go from there. This is kind of rounded in, so I'm going to have to round that a little bit more, I think. One of the problems with this one is because of the rounded bottom, it doesn't want to stay sitting in one spot. It rolls around a lot. So we'll do our best to get this as tight as we can without flipping it upwards. We'll just make a little scratch there where they come together. A little bit beyond there, so I have a little space to file. We'll cut that off. I usually buy this height of bezel for most things just because it's easy to just keep one sort around and then file it down to the level you want. I do also keep some 1/4 inch around because every once in a while you run across something really thick. But most times I'm taking it down from this to a much shorter height. Now this one, we're going to have to curve the bottom of the bezel, so we may not be able to take much. We're going to need that height to compensate for the curve of the band. Does that make sense? Get those lined up, use a little bit of solder on them, and get it soldered. One of these days I'm going to have to break down and buy a new ceramic block. I really like the ceramic blocks, but they break after a while. I know you can bind them together. I've done that with a couple of them, but it'd be nice to have a nice fresh one. There you are. Put a little bit of solder here. Okay, let's see if we can reshape this. I think we're spot on the size on that one. Alright, so what we need to do though is we need to make those decorations to start with. And I need to know how far they're going to stick out so I know how big of a piece of sheet to cut. Since the price of silver is so precious right now, I don't want to waste too much. You know, but normally I just cut a big chunk and trim off the excess, but I want to keep it sort of close. So let's start with I think let's start with this one. So I'm going to cut off the end of this. I want these to be really tight up against the stone itself, so we're going to do our best to do that. Let's file that in flat. Now we're kind of getting in the ballpark here. Keep that on there pretty tightly. So I'm going to make a mark about there. I don't want this to be loose enough to have any space between it and the bezel, because otherwise when you solder it down it looks sloppy generally. At least when you're... That's been my experience in the past anyway, so... So I'd rather be a little on the tight side and have to stretch it a bit. And this stuff will stretch pretty easily. So, and I'm not going to use a huge amount of solder. Also, if you flux the whole thing, that solder is going to run along the entire length and make it quite a bit stiffer. So if you want to be able to bend it, at least while you're at this stage, you don't want a lot of solder getting all the way around there, just where it comes together. It'll make it easier to bend. So let me find my solder and cut myself little tiny pieces. So I do something called pick soldering, and that's where I pick up a little bit of solder on the end of this titanium pick, like this. Oops. Like that. If you're interested in learning how to do that, I'll put a link up there. That's probably the most important skill I've learned as far as metalsmithing goes. It's just so much easier to place a little solder where you want it. I'm going to add just a little bit more to make sure we're on there good. It allows you to deliver your solder in exactly the amount you want to the place you want pretty easily once you've got the hang of it. And with a little practice, I think anybody can get the hang of it. The real key to doing it is generally is getting both pieces of silver that you're trying to solder up to the right temperature before you move the pick in with the solder. And if you do that, it should just jump right on there. So, yeah, that's tight. That's what I want. So I want to have to kind of force it on there. So I think after this, I'm going to have a row of balls around it, and the balls are about this wide. So we're going to have another rope going the opposite direction further out. I think maybe I'll use this smaller one. So we're going to have to kind of estimate a little bit because I can't really solder the balls on until we have this all soldered to that curved sheet. So let's get it as close as we can. And then we'll cut a piece of sheet. This is 22 gauge sheet. I'm going to try and make this kind of around a 9, 9.5 here. So we can kind of push it down a little bit around that. Oops. That's pretty close, and it lays pretty nicely, right around a 9 on the mandrel. So we'll use that. It might have been good to find the exact center on it, but I'm going to kind of estimate. Should have done that in advance, probably. That should give us plenty of room if we do it right about there. So I'm going to pull this off. And what we're going to do next is we're going to go over and use the rotary tool to carve this on the bottom of the bezel so it matches that curve. And then we'll start adding the decorations. Okay, so you can probably see on here that I made a little black mark on either tip like that. Kind of tapered. The eventual shape of this is going to be sort of saddle shaped. It's going to be up here and then dip down here and then up there and then dip down there again, so it fits on the. So we're carving out that spot there basically. And I probably didn't mark it perfectly, but I'm going to kind of test it periodically. I'm using a white abrasive silicone wheel to take this off of here. That's not bad for an initial start. Let's get the other side a little bit. A little gap there still. This side's close right here. I want to make sure it's sitting straight too and we're not offset a little bit. So let's work on this side first here. I'm going to try and blend that in a little bit better on the sides here. Okay, I think that's pretty close. Let's go with that and solder it down. So I've got that centered there. I've got a little bit of solder over here still. I may cut a little bit more. And we'll flux it and then see if we can get that down. We'll put a few pieces in here. Just want it to kind of sit up against the side and the bottom as well. Quite a bit more mass in the bottom piece than there is in the bezel, so I'm going to focus most of the heat on that. And you can also kind of protect the bezel by doing this little kind of flame tunnel thing underneath it. We're going to put that down on there. In order to get it to lay down nicely, Sometimes I file a flat surface on one side of this. So let's do that and see if that helps. Not done it when I don't know if I've ever done one where I rounded the base and then added decoration, so this is kind of a new one for me as well. So I gotta flatten it out a little bit. Kind of strikes me that this is like a saddle-shaped ring, so I guess it's a saddle ring. I didn't really think of it that way, but it is. Okay, so let's see if we can get that soldered on okay. So I'm going to put this in a third hand, I think, in order to manipulate the direction that it's facing, so I can add these balls on here. And I think what I might do, actually let me show you how I made the balls really quick. In order to do a whole bunch of the same size small balls, I usually drill a short hole and stick the wire in there like that. And you can have a whole bunch of different length holes, but each time you cut one off right at the end there, it'll be pretty much the same size. It's much easier than trying to hold up a little piece or hold it against a ruler or whatever. You know, just decide on the size and then drill a hole that creates that size, and then you're good to go. I'm going to start kind of in the middle here, just work my way out. You know what might be easiest is if we do what's called sweat soldering, and we'll pre-melt some solder on each of these balls. I think we're going to have to do 3 at a time here. Keep dropping them on the floor. If I drop too many, I'll have to make some more because I'm not feeling the crawling around on the floor thing today. After we're done, we're going to cool it off and then we're going to pick at these balls. You always want to pick your balls really hard to make sure that they don't come off when you don't want them to. Years ago, when I was pretty new at this, I made something that had balls going all the way around the stone, kind of like this. And it was brought back a few days later because 2 of the balls had fallen off. So you want to really carefully try and dislodge your balls. It's better if it happens now when I can fix it than after I sell it to somebody. You don't want to have some sort of embarrassing ball incident. You don't want to become the guy whose balls fall off all the time. Maybe this is just easier to do without the third hand in general. Sometimes if you quench it while it's still pretty hot, if the balls aren't attached, they'll fall off. So now, I'm going to do some serious ball picking. I just try and dig my fingernail under there and really pry as hard as I can. Sometimes they look like they're on there, but they're not really on there. And when that does happen, that's because you've got a cold solder joint, which is when you have one part of it gets up to the soldering temperature, but the other part doesn't. In the case of this particular situation, these balls are very small and don't have much mass, so it takes very little time to get those up to the soldering temperature, versus this big sheet with the bezel on top of it, that takes a little bit longer. So we're going to let that pickle for a couple minutes, and I'm going to take a little neck break, and then we'll come back and add the second rope that goes around there that's a little bit finer. That's reasonably good. Just add a little solder in there, sure. That one borders that pretty nicely, actually. I don't think I'm going to even need to flatten the back side of that one, because it's got a nice connection going all the way around it, I think. The curve wasn't so much that I had to use my saw, although you could if you wanted to. So for the band, remember I said I have the, I think it was about 12 gauge that I flattened out. So I cut two pieces to be about a size 9, 9 1/4. Let's solder those together. So I spread those open a little bit, and I marked the sides from the top that looked pretty close to the center of the head of the ring, because when I'm soldering on bands like this, I almost always get them crooked. So I'm going to try not to get it crooked this time. Yeah, whoops. Interestingly, I didn't quite get the curve right, so it's raised above the center part. And I saw that when I was getting ready to solder, but I thought it doesn't really matter, honestly. So that's going to go like that. I think that's kind of an attractive ring. That's better than I expected, honestly. You know, I had this in my mind, and I thought that might be kind of cool. But all right, well, let's let that pickle, and then I'll get it all cleaned up. We can set that stone. So. Alright, so I've got this all ready to go. I may oxidize this in here, I haven't decided yet. Sometimes it helps things to look a little more consistent, sometimes it makes it less consistent looking, but overall I'm pleased with it. I think it came out to be an attractive ring. But let's go ahead and set this stone. I used a little tag board underneath it, and because of the curve, I get asked this a lot when you have a curve kind of situation like that. I tucked a little strip of tag board into the corner to kind of give it a more of a saddle shape for the stone to sit in. But it sits in there just about right. So I do this a little different than some. I use my chain nose pliers as a bezel pusher, so we're going to start off by kind of like just using that flat side and pushing it straight in. Once you have it laid down pretty good, tight against there, I'm going to use the rounded outer part of the chain nose here to burnish that edge. Okay, well, say in this instance the ring looks a lot better than my picture. So I think that turned out okay. I like it. It's a pleasing ring. So All right, well, I'll get some better pictures and put them at the end. Tell me what you think in the comments. All right, well, that was the nested kind of chrysoprase ring. I hope you enjoyed that. If you enjoyed that, I'd love it if you'd hit the like button for me. That really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate that a lot. I'd also love it if you'd head over to my main channel page. I have about 700 videos now. I've been doing this for about 4 years, and I do 3 per week, so there's quite a bit of content there. I think you're almost certain to find something else interesting or useful. And I'd also love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. So it doesn't cost anything and it helps me out a great deal. So plus you'll also be able to hit the little bell icon and then you get a notification when I release a video, which is on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So I wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters, and I couldn't do this without their support. I have a new one, Lee. I hope you enjoy getting to know some of the people over there. I appreciate you signing up. And I think you'll find that it's a great group of people with a lot of knowledge that you can tap into. So get to know some of the people over there and check out some of the content. And thanks also to my previous patrons. I really do appreciate their support. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 26,900, which is awesome. Thank you for that. I really love the comment section of my YouTube. I get so many nice comments from people, and it's lovely to hear your stories and the different ways that you do things. I've learned so much from all of you, and I do appreciate that. I also appreciate the nice support that you provide me with the little financial purchases, the buy me a coffees, the super thanks, buying my merch or my ebooks. That stuff keeps my channel sustainable, and I couldn't do it without your help as well. So thank you for that. Finally, hit the video description down below. There's some information about this video and some links that are useful. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that community and the various tiers of membership there. There's a link to my newest ebook, which is a guide to 2025's tutorials. There's a page for each of the tutorials I did in 2025. It has a link to the video, but it also has a picture of the sketch that I drew, a picture of the final product, a list of materials it takes to make the project. If there's a stone, it'll have some stone information. And a difficulty rating. And then finally I took some notes about each of the projects. Things I might have learned during the project, because I almost always learn something new when I make something different that I haven't tried before. And things that I might have done differently if I was to do it again. Whether I felt like it was a good outcome or not. I don't always love the things that come out, but sometimes I do, so I tell you that. But ultimately, it's a great way to have a whole bunch of projects right at your fingertips and a nice way to support my channel. You can even get all 3 of them that I've done for the 3 years that I've been doing this. Well, actually 4 years now, but I've done this for 3 years, 2023, 2024, and 2025. You can get that as a package deal for $15 off, and you can get any 2 of them as a package deal as well for a slightly better deal. So check that out, get yourself 1 or 2 of those, and you'll be set for projects for a long time. Finally, there's a link to my merch store if you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks that I showed you at the beginning. I find those immensely useful for keeping track of my projects. I think you will too. So get yourself 1 or 2 of those. They're very useful. All right, well, thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.